Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we are now going to be diving into the Chiefs versus Bengals game. Really was the headliner of Sunday in my opinion, and we saw the Chiefs pull off yet another comeback win under Patrick Mahomes to take this game 26-25. Now, that being said, my main takeaway from this game is actually more so on the losing side, and it's optimistic about the Cincinnati Bengals, where it was frustrating, I'm sure, for Bengals fans, where they totally folded on themselves, especially so in that fourth quarter. There was the Joe Burrow fumble at the beginning of the quarter that was returned for a touchdown to give the Chiefs the lead. The next drive, Ja'Marr Chase is yelling at the refs, getting in their faces for a good 10 seconds that ended up getting a personal foul that made the third down conversion basically impossible, and they had to settle for a field goal. The Bengals had chances to close out the Chiefs on their final drive as they were up. Burrow and JioSaavn couldn't connect on a second down, ended up getting sacked on third down, giving the Chiefs back the ball, and as soon as that happened, we all sort of knew how this was going to go down, that you're giving Mahomes and the Chiefs a chance to walk you off, and that's exactly what they did. Especially considering the fact that, the Bengals actually had the Chiefs, it seemed like, in a 4th and 16. They end up sort of gift wrapping the win to the Chiefs with the pass interference call on that 4th and 16, which ultimately, it's a fine pass interference call. I don't know. I don't feel great about it still. I know that it was the right call, and that's totally fine. I'm the last person that's going to complain about the refs in this situation. It is just, I feel like I watched so much football yesterday, and I saw that contact not get called a number of times. But again, whatever. The Bengals had plenty of opportunities, like I just mentioned, to not blow this game, and ultimately it was the rookie in coverage there. He ended up jumping early, and that's what happens. Ends up being a pass interference that, sets the Chiefs up for that game-winning field goal. But again, although everything I just mentioned there in that fourth quarter was a bit disastrous, the Bengals still played a good game. And this is a team that everybody was writing off after that first week. And I think that this was at least good enough in my books to avoid panic breaking out. Now, I know some people are already there. I think that that's an overreaction to week one. But Burrow in the offense looked pretty good, all things considered. Burrow, 23 of 36, 258 yards, a couple touchdowns. The fumble was obviously a huge mistake from him. But, so many people, it seemed like, were turning the page on Burrow as a quarterback, as a passer. This idea that he can only succeed when he has multiple star wide receivers. It's not like he lit the world on fire on Sunday, but he was good enough to win this game. Ja'Marr Chase is definitely still off to a slow start, which isn't a great sign. 10 receptions for 97 yards through 2 games. That is most certainly not the production that we were expecting from him. I think that it'll change. Now, the vibes are a little bit scary in regards to the fact that Chase is talking about how he felt misled by the Bengals in the offseason and the whole contract negotiation process, him sitting out for the majority of training camp. But, he is just an elite talent. Joe Burrow and him have the connection going back to LSU, so I would bet money on this thing sort of coming around for Ja'Marr Chase and the Bengals. But overall, I thought that the offense was pretty good. Definitely would want to get more out of their run game. Ended up just having 22 carries for 74 yards, a little bit underwhelming there. Maybe they're missing Joe Mixon a little bit. Ultimately, I don't know how much of an upgrade he would have been in this situation, but not the efficiency that the Bengals were hoping for on the run game. So that needs to be worked out. And then on the defensive side of the ball as well, I thought that they played well enough to win the game. Held Kansas City to just 286 yards and 20 points. Obviously, 6 of those coming from that defensive touchdown from Kansas City. But Mahomes didn't look good in this game, and Mahomes really hasn't been excellent, I would say, these first 2 weeks. But overall, still, it's Patrick Mahomes. That anytime you are able to limit him in that way, couple interceptions there, at least one, maybe two more interceptions that were taken off the board due to penalties. And I was really encouraged by what I saw from that Cincinnati secondary to be able to sort of take the next step. This is a defense that was at the bottom of the league last year in terms of basically every significant stat, especially so in passing situations and overall total yards per game. I believe they were 31st in yards per game allowed. That we got to see some of these new additions, take big steps for them. Von Bell and Geno Stone, two very good safeties for them. Cam Taylor-Britt, although he did get burned on the Rashee Rice touchdown, I think he made up for it at least to some degree with that absurd interception that he had. Thought he played pretty well throughout the game as well. And I think that there are a lot of pieces here on the Bengals defense that do sort of need to take the next step. Secondary was very good, like I mentioned. Front seven got pushed around a little bit in the run game, and we're going to be going a little bit more into the run game for Kansas City in a moment here. But all of this to be said, that the Bengals, they played far from a flawless game and yet went toe-to-toe with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs also did not play their best game by any means, but I think it just goes to show that the Bengals are not as far out of the picture as a lot of people are really making it seem like. I know 0-2 can be a detrimental mark to some degree, but the Bengals are one of the teams in recent history to start 0-2 and still make the playoffs. They did so in 2022. So I think that ultimately a lot of outside factors have been holding the Bengals down to some degree early on here, but I think they're going to be just okay. It helps as well, given the fact that the rest of the division hasn't been all that great, where, the Steelers are the only undefeated team, and I believe they've scored one touchdown in 2 games. The Bengals are going to get T. Higgins back, so I think that they are going to be just fine. Obviously, not where they would have hoped to be at this point in the season, but I'm not overreacting by any means. That's a tough game in Arrowhead, and again, one of those other things in the fourth quarter go differently. Can't play the hypothetical game like that, I know. But I think that they were most certainly in this game and, have a case for they maybe even outplayed the Chiefs as a whole. But, on the other side of this with Kansas City, we know who the Chiefs are. They're obviously the 2-time defending champions here, and they feel like they're on top of the world, and they did continue to show that to a lot of degree. Business as usual, just a casual Patrick Mahomes game-winning drive. But the big storyline for the Chiefs coming out of this game is the fact that running back Isiah Pacheco did go down with an injury right inside that 2-minute warning mark. And ultimately, it was just reported on this morning that Pacheco has fractured his fibula. So he is expected to miss significant time. That is a brutal injury to suffer. Again, right at the end of the game as well. I think it sort of went a little bit under the radar, but that is a huge loss for the Chiefs. Pacheco has been incredible really for the past couple seasons, but in this game as well, 19 carries, 90 yards, and he has emerged as really the first workhorse running back that Kansas City has had in the Patrick Mahomes era. Now, that being said, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is on the team, and, he was one of those first running backs for Mahomes that maybe he could find some sort of resurgence. I wouldn't be banking on that. I do worry a good amount about the lack of depth with the Chiefs running backs. Now, they were lacking depth at pass catchers last year, and they still ended up winning the Super Bowl. So ultimately, you can't overreact too much to any degree, but the Chiefs have played in a couple close games, and now they're taking a huge hit to their offensive play style. I think what's been so impressive about the Chiefs is the fact that they have been able to sort of find that duality of the offense of, yes, you have Patrick Mahomes, he's excellent, but in games like yesterday where Mahomes isn't really clicking and Travis Kelce was absent for the majority of the game, he only got 3 targets in this game for 1 catch. So, the passing game hasn't quite been as elite as we're used to, but the running game sort of had their back. 149 rush yards for the offense in that game, and you're knocked down a couple pegs as well in terms of you had more rushing yards than passing yards in this game if you're the Chiefs. And knowing that Pacheco is now going to be out for a lot of the season, that's a real concern in my eyes. Now, something that, yes, when you have Patrick Mahomes, I think you're going to be capable of overcoming just about anything. They seem to be big fans of their undrafted free agent running back, Carson Steele, who did have a fumble in this game, but ultimately it sounds like they're very high on behind the scenes there, and maybe he could emerge a little bit more for them. They trusted him enough even after the fumble to go back to Steele on that final game-securing drive, so there's that. We'll have to see there, but Pacheco being out is a real difference maker, in my opinion, for the Chiefs moving forward. But let me know what your takeaways were from this game. Let me know if you think I'm letting the Bengals off the hook too easily. I'm still a believer in them myself, but I know that a lot of people don't echo that same sentiment. So, again, Bengals, a team that I think there were a lot of positives to come away from with this week, but that being said, they didn't come away with a win, so they are 0-2. They do still have an uphill battle, but I'm choosing to believe in the process there with Joe Burrow and that Bengals team. But we are now going to be moving on to what was probably the most surprising result of the game of the day, and that was the Dallas Cowboys at home, where they were unbelievable last season, getting blown out to the New Orleans Saints. So we're going to be diving into all of that, but first we are going to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.